Okay, awesome. Well,
And Megan, I'm going to be driving home while it worked out. I'm going to be driving home, so I'll be listening. I should be home in around 10 minutes, so I will put my computer on when I come home, but I'll leave my phone on until then.
all right, sounds good. I think some of this first part will just be updates, so you'll just hear some of that, Lisa. So, welcome everyone to our March 29th Social Service Funding Committee meeting. We have kind of it's a perfect time. I'm glad we were able to schedule for today because the grants closed yesterday. So my hope and plan for the agenda today is to provide you all some staff updates, which will include kind of an overview of the grant applications and what to expect moving forward. And then I'm hoping we can do a debrief of a few site visits because we've had a site visit with Big Brothers Big Sisters and with RISE since we last met. And then we're going to talk about the scoring matrix. That's kind of our main plan for this evening, and go into a little bit more detail specific to both the equity pieces of the application and the budget pieces of the application. So we'll see what we get to. I'm anticipating just sharing some reading materials with you all around those pieces in the next couple days to add to all of the grant reading that you'll have to do as well. So we can have some follow-up conversations as well at our next meeting. So with that, I'm just going to dive into updates and call on a few folks because they'll have some other updates that coincide. So first, the grant application is closed. Hooray. We received 31 applications. We received a total ask of $518,000. We have, just as a reminder, we have about $310,000 to give out. Honestly, both the kind of number of applications is pretty normal for us, and then the total ask, like the difference between the ask and what we have to give, is also pretty normal. But the numbers are higher because we have more money to give and we have more being requested as well. So just to say, all of this is pretty familiar. One thing that stands out is that 10 of the 31 applications are first-time applications to the committee. So we have a lot of new applications that we will be reviewing together. Some of those are one or two are ones that just haven't been successful when they've applied in the past, or they haven't come in for a while, but the majority of them are truly new applications. There are, for the most part of those new applications, with the exception of maybe two, I've had conversations with all of those organizations to hear kind of what their ask was and help them through the application process as they went, since this is the first time. So I have touched base with several of them and can also help just fill in some gaps around what some of those proposals are, if there's any confusion. So yeah, I think I sent an Excel sheet that has an overview of what those applications are. You all should be able to log into Zoom Grants and have access to all of those as well now, to be able to start reading through all of those different proposals we have. And you are going to have essentially 2 weeks to read through the proposals at a pretty high level. And then our next meeting is on April 12th. That's a Tuesday. And we are going to be in person in the council chambers at City Hall that evening to do a first round of consensus building around the applications and decide who do we want to invite to interviews. All of the first-time applicants will be invited to interviews. So we have that scheduled for April 23rd. We have so many that I don't think we are going to be able to do it all in one day. So I had sent you all like kind of a backup evening. I don't think it will be a super long evening, but I do think we'll have to do a couple of additional interviews, knowing that. So we'll talk about that more on April 12th when we go through the consensus building. Before I go into more detail, there are two things actually. One, I will be sending you historical note sheets, excuse me, after this, that detail everybody's funding history and their asks. So you will get that from me tonight. And then the second piece is that, I just wanted to open up kind of for returning folks, any suggestions you have for new committee members on kind of reading through the applications, what notes should they take, how do they come to that consensus meeting? One thing that's like probably a good practice is you want to have, I kind of use like, we're going to use some base consensus, like, yes, I would fund this. I have some concerns, haven't decided, or like, no, I do not want to fund this. That's kind of what we're going to do to get consensus around this. So when you read through the applications, if it's like a red, yellow, green light or something, like have like a shorthand note for yourself so that when we do that, we can make it through consensus pretty fast without you having to like refer back to like in-depth notes about it. I would probably make some kind of shorthand note for yourself. And again, it's not like we're going to discuss all of this, but just so that we can then have an idea of where is the committee, like where do we have consensus around what we want to fund, where do we need to answer some questions, and then where are their concerns. So that's my advice, but I wanted to open it up. Wei Wei, Mike, if you want to share anything about kind of what you have found has been helpful as you read through these and take notes. And we're going to come back to the scoring matrix later, but just in general, what advice do you have?
My experience is that if you, while you're reading it, get a piece of paper and a pen just by your computer, and then take notes about who you have read, whatever highlights you remember, right? Because once you finish all 31 of them, things will just all gobble up in your mind. Another thing is, there are lots of categories of things like the food pantries, school, food pantries, or church food pantries. Make sure you highlight some of them so you don't get confused about which one that you wanted to fund and which one actually does something extraordinary, right? So it just takes some notes. It doesn't have to be nice. You don't have to show anybody. That's how I keep myself sane, basically. And I also have a notebook that just keep writing things down, like, Megan's homework, in 2 weeks, you got to get it done and all of that. Yeah.
What I would add, and it'll be a question from Megan, and that is, Megan, are we going to go through them alphabetically? Okay.
Most likely, yeah.
Okay, because I was last year I didn't ask that question, and I was all over the board in how I did it, and so it took me a while to come to which ones I should be looking at. And anyway, so just I like to do things via paper. I did a whole bunch of copying things off here, and it got confusing at times. Some people are going to decide they just want to look at the PDFs here. I, in general, like to do it by printing things out. So that would be my suggestion, is just to be sure. And if Megan, if you choose you want to do it something else, you'll just kind of let us know.
Yes, that's a good point. And I should say, when you're looking at the Excel sheet that I sent, and if anybody can share screen it, I can't share screen that document, but when you're looking at it, there's a couple of categories. That is just meant to be like an overview sheet, like a quick cheat sheet for you all. And so what you have there is you have the organization name, you have the name of the project or program that they're applying for, you have the amount that they have requested, and then the primary priority that they are coming in under. And then after that, I have made notes about what year of funding they are in. So you'll see this in more detail in the historical note sheets that get sent out, but within that, thank you, Grace. Within that category, you can kind of see year four. It was color coded, but the coloring got lost. The reason that I have indicated that is because historically we have talked about the timing as having some impact on the grants as well. So generally we say, for 3 years, you're within the realm of applying. After 3 years, it's less certain, like you may need to take a break. We may look at your application a little bit differently. And so you'll see on there, originally, I will go back and color code it and resend it out to you all, because I had color coded everything from year 1 to year 3, one color, everything after year 3, a different color, and then the first time organizations were their own color. And of course, organizations coming in for the first time, there's several kind of additional pieces. One, we haven't seen them before, so we're all kind of learning together. There has been, I think, both within the committee, but also from council, some direction on granting to new organizations or new applicants. They're not necessarily all new organizations. And additionally, their budgets may look a little bit different, which we'll talk about later today, and they are guaranteed an interview. So those are some of the things that are specific to those first-time applicants. So I tried to note it there for you, and then you'll see it in the note sheets as well. What years have they been funded, and for how much? So you'll have all that information at your fingertips.
So if I can ask then, I am on the website. I did go to the applications, but I did not see the Excel sheet. And so if I didn't, it's possible that others didn't also.
It's through email. So I sent it out, but I'll send it out again with the overview sheets after our meeting. Just cleaned up a little bit. So
I see. Okay.
A lot of information to look at. And I know Rachel and Grace, like going through it the first time, it's just like, what do I pay attention to? So some of that, whatever questions you have, if there are things that's like, I really have a question about this, make sure you write that down so that we can bring that into interviews or into committee discussion. Don't feel like you have to know everything right off the bat. That's what I'm here for. That's what the returning folks are here for, is to just help fill some of that information in. And don't feel, everybody does it differently, but don't feel like you need to score right off the bat. So you will score in Zoom grants for each of those applications, but you can score anywhere until we get to the final deliberation, which is on May 7th. So I need your scores before then, but you can go in and you can edit them after interviews or after we've had more discussion as a committee, or you can put them in, for the first time after that as well. So you don't need to look, you can kind of do a quick look before we go into consensus, and then a more in-depth look, later as we get farther into the process. Don't feel like you need to grab all the information right at once. So some of that will come through that. So yeah, other helpful things, Mike?
Just another thought then. If we go through consensus on the 12th and we've agreed that particular groups are going to be, call it shoo-ins, do we need to score them?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Everyone will need a score still. So unless the only time you would not need to score is if we collectively choose to like disqualify an application. I have done like an early review, and I think everything qualifies. None of the organizations are receiving like CDBG funding, so there's no issue in terms of kind of the separate city funding streams there. But if anything catches your attention as you all read, please bring that to the next meeting for us to talk about. And yeah, the main disqualifying factor is if it does not meet one of the city council priorities, or if they're receiving CDBG funding, which again, I've already kind of done a pre-look at. So no issue there. Cool. All right, well, that's it's a lot of info. We're going to talk more about kind of the actual scoring process. But let me know if any of you have issues getting into Zoom grants and actually seeing the new grants. So this is fiscal year 22-23 as a reminder. I think everybody
Really
has access.
The looks. So
let me know.
don't let the budget scare you.
Yes, that is a good point, Lisa, thanks. And also a reminder that as you read through the applications, make sure you do the application tab and then also the documents tab where they've uploaded the additional budget info. Again, we will talk about that in a little bit. Awesome. Yeah, well, yeah, any immediate reactions to seeing that list? I can share, again, I can screen share Zoom grants so you all can see it. But just any immediate thoughts or questions?
It's never too early to start reviewing them. That's one thing I found was that I kind of waited till the last minute on some of it last year, and there's enough that keep it fresh in our minds to start the review fairly early.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And it's easy to, I think everybody kind of has their own niche in terms of services they provide, but when you're reading 30 applications of these, is easy to confuse things. So any kind of shorthand notes you can have for yourself is helpful. I will say just like a couple of my observations from walking through the process with folks and getting to this point. School-based programs we're seeing a lot more of during kind of COVID. That's been, a lot of them took a step back for asking for funding, or were not actually able to deliver their programs because schools were shut or kind of in this like hybrid phase. So I talked to several school-based programs that are coming back for the first time. That includes Girls Inc. But then also a new applicant was REAP and the Special Hoop Camp. So there's a couple there. One thing that I heard kind of across the board, but also specific with those programs was also just like the need for youth mental health services, which I think we've had some conversation about as a committee. and how they are working to address that in partnership with other folks. And then I would say one of the other themes is there were organizations that received funding during COVID from CARES or from other funding streams that now don't have funding, are looking for other funding opportunities to continue doing their work. And several of those do culturally specific service delivery, which include, for example, the Korean Society of Oregon or Women Sew. So you'll have some other applications to read about there as well. But I think just a really tremendous amount of work happening in our community, and I'm excited for you all to read about it.
Yes.
A lot of things that were new to me, and I think just I'll be really excited to hear what you all think once you've had a chance to read through them. So other quick updates for our in-person meeting. I will have food. You will not be required to wear masks, but we will, you'll each have kind of your own table and your own space to sit at. So they'll be kind of 6 feet apart. We will have it mic'd so everybody can hear each other. We are not, as of right now, offering a like hybrid option for that one. So let me know if you all are not able to make it. And just please be ready. The only thing really for that meeting is some of this early consensus building and discussion on applications. So please bring your notes and just kind of a general idea of who has applied and who you want to interview and fund. Those are the two things that I ask for that meeting. Board and commission interviews. I heard from several of you, so Wei Wei and Hazel both responded, and then Mike about sitting in on interviews. They have actually been, the time has changed. So our interview is going to be at 10 a.m. Instead of 2 p.m. And it's only 15 minutes. So Wei Wei, do you know if that will still work for you? And Mike, would that work for you?
Let me check. So this is on the same day, right?
Yes.
On the 31st, Thursday. At this point it's 2 o'clock. I think I can still make it.
Okay.
10 o'clock. Do you have the link?
I do. I will forward it to you after this.
Okay.
Megan, I'm going to try to get it on my computer again if I can't make it. So you'll see me trying to enter in a minute.
Cool. Sounds good. Mike, would 10 a.m. work for you that day?
Yes, 10 a.m. would work. But I heard you say 1 to 2 members. So if Hazel decides that he wanted to do it and he came first, that's fine also. I'll let you just let me know.
Awesome. I will send out the link. I will send out that link and we will have that interview. So, yep, that was that. There's also the College Possible site visit. That is Thursday night, right?
Yeah.
So just a reminder, if you want to join for that, it is going to be at 4:30 p.m. And it's virtual. We have the Zoom link. I sent that out over email. Feel free to join if you would like to. I think, thank you, Lisa, for helping arrange that one. And then I think that is all of my calendar logistics. So the next piece was just one thing that I wanted to share was, and I have shared, is that we are working with Portland State to help do a research study on the nonprofit incubator and kind of best practices for what that would look like, and kind of what are the needs in our community when it comes to a nonprofit incubator. Mike and Lisa both had conversations with the research folks from PSU. So I just wanted to provide a little bit of space to see if either of you wanted to share a little bit about either what you heard or what you shared about that project.
Lisa saw that and must have just run away. And I will say that I've already maybe conveniently forgotten a lot of the details of that, so much as I did have a meeting with the 3 gentlemen from PSU, and I thought it went real nicely. They asked some good questions about what should an incubator look like. Some of it was education for me, meaning, what is an incubator versus, I thought at first that it was sort of like a dollars application versus more of a facility to help. So it was good information, and I think part of it was gave them some questions to clarify, probably with you, Megan, or others in the city. So I appreciated being able to be on the call, and thank you.
Yeah, and I have sent them, they're going to do a survey with nonprofits. So all of our grantees, kind of past, present, and future, are on that list, as well as some other organizations that we've worked with through arts, events, and kind of our Welcoming Beaverton initiative. So they will be doing a survey process, and then I anticipate actually that they will join us at our one of our April meetings as well. So you'll get to hear a little bit more, and they will share kind of where they're at in the process at that time. So just something to look forward to for one of our April meetings. Awesome. Thanks, Mike, for sharing that. Cool. Okay. Well, site visits. We've had 2, so I just want to make space to share out a little bit about how those went and any kind of observations you had. So I'm going to start. The first one was Big Brothers Big Sisters, which was in person. And Mike and Wei Wei were able to attend, so I will just send it to you. And anything you want to share about that site visit, now's your chance.
Okay, I'll start on it, and Wei Wei, I'm sure you will add a few things too. I arranged with Cynthia at Big Brothers Big Sisters, and we were able to meet where Wei Wei and Megan and I met with their CEO and their director, and I started it. I had a series of just really simple type questions of successes and COVID challenges, other challenges, and just some, what can we do to help? I will be the first to say I'm a Pollyanna type person, and that I liked where they were in general. I recognize that their strength is with Anglo and Hispanic folks, that we ask them about other languages, other cultures, and they don't have as much experience with that. One thing that was a good pause for me was they're mentioning that they have a waiting list of some 300 people. And what it told me is that even though Big Brothers is a significant, a large agency, that the dollars that we are able to provide do go somewhere and do have a benefit. So in this case, it increased the number of Beaverton children that they were able to impact. So even with these large companies or nonprofits, that were able to impact them. Wei Wei?
I don't know if you all know it. The Big Brothers and Big Sisters has this model of having a mentor and a youth, a child. So it's a one-on-one mentorship. I sort of worked with them before I retired in both Portland Public Schools and Beaverton School District. So I kind of like know their model. I asked them some questions that that they answered it not to my satisfaction at all. I'm going to be very straightforward and frank with you. I asked them what population they're serving, what is the mentor population. So in other words, I want to see the mentors matching with the demographics of the kids. There is no match. Basically, I think it's 70% kids of color and 30% mentors of color, right? Okay, so that's one question. Another question, I asked them about the recent immigrants in Beaverton. For instance, the Afghanistan refugees are coming or here, they have been here. Lisa probably can tell us if she has seen any in the Beaverton schools. So I asked the Big Brother and Big Sister ED, executive director, if that's the population that they're getting into. The answer was no. We have a 300 wait list. The answer wasn't like we wait for them to come to us, but the meaning was exactly like that. In other words, the kids have to go to the Big Brothers and Big Sisters to get served, which bothered me a lot because new immigrants would not know anything about the service systems in our city, right? It's just not. Another thing is that this organization has been in place since 1904. But that's a whole lot of years for them to build. I just wondered if they have adapted to the diversity of our city, which is crazy, right? Like Beaverton is one of the most diverse cities in the state of Oregon. Like Beaverton School District has 96 languages that kids speak, and 51% of the kids in Beaverton School District are kids of color. So we are already in this majority minority stage. I don't know if the Big Brothers and Big Sisters as a group recognizes that, right? Anyway, so I just feel like the concept of equity is not quite there from both of their the staff, two staff members. It just not, they're not talking about that at all. They have this model, they're going to stay with this model, they have this thing. And I think the answer was, all we need is money. But that's not true. That's not, money is not the answer to everything, especially now.
Thanks, Wei Wei. Thanks, Mike. Yeah, I think definitely larger organization, been around for a really long time, works kind of with a broad community, and has a model that has been popular and has seen success. but we will get to chat a little bit about organization, kind of specifically identifying and prioritizing youth for some mentorship opportunities as well. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Rachel and Grace to share a little bit about the RISE virtual site visit that we did with their ED Jody, and then they had clients and also one of their kind of volunteer leads there as well. So Rachel and Grace, do you want to share a little bit about how that went?
Rachel, do you want to go first?
Not necessarily. Do you want me to go first?
Yeah, I can share a little bit. Yeah, this was like very first meeting that I joined. So I was like going into the meeting heavily relying on you all and just like taking it. And so overall, the experience was very inspiring in a way, because the work that they do within the community felt really authentic. And the Jody and I believe his name was Axel, I could definitely feel that they were very passionate about the work they do and very involved in the community. And when Gali, one of the girls that got served like through the organization, shared her story, it just made me think, kind of reflect my life almost. So it was very touching too. So overall, I felt like the organization was very authentic and very passionate about the cause. And they are kind of thinking about the people that will not necessarily reach out for the resources, but they are kind of reaching out for them. So I think there was like value in that. But with that being said, I was a little bit unsure about the what will be the procedure around the or the protocols around the minors, like someone like underage, like so when Axel shared his story about like taking in like homeless kid, like and like like housing him for a while, which is great, but I don't know if there is any some sort of like process that he needs to go through. And if that's the case, I wonder if that is being done like within the organization. So that was like only thing that was like coming to my mind. And me not having any kids, or so I'm not really familiar with the whole the parent like guidance was like, what was the word? The Britney Spears went through the whole thing that yeah, that they like
Guardianship.
Yeah, guardianship. Yes. Like, so I don't know, if there is anything that is in place within the organization. So that was the only thing that came to my mind. But overall, yeah, I really liked the session.
Well, I never thought that we would work Britney Spears into one of our meetings. So well done, Grace. Yeah, I really enjoyed this site visit as well. It was actually kind of the opposite of what it sounds like Wei Wei and Mike's experience was with Big Brother, Big Sisters. Real grassroots organization. You can tell that they are taking like a real holistic approach to serving people in their community, and just using whatever resources they have to help these people out. And it was really powerful to have Gali there as well to tell her story and to like better understand the ripple effects that their work has. So in her instance, they had helped her with legal processes, with going through the system to get her visa and stuff. And then they helped her son's father get a job and helped her mom out with something. And it was just like continued to help out other people in her family. And that's kind of what they do with a lot of people that they serve. And they're, as Grace said, actively seeking out these people in need of help, because for the most part, they're seeing that they're largely serving Latinx and immigrants and people who have maybe not had good experiences with our legal systems or distrustful of institutions in general, and they're finding those people and helping where they need to be helped. And that was pretty cool.
Yeah, as you say that, Rachel, I was thinking, I was lucky enough, thank you all for scheduling around me, to go to both. And interesting just that RISE has had a focus on some male mentorship. They've, I think, looked at the family holistically and said, how do we, make sure everybody's needs are met? That's kind of what we heard. But we also heard that in Big Brothers Big Sisters too, like the need for kind of boys and like for male mentors, like specific to that, and just how hard that's been, because a lot of volunteers and like folks that come into this area tend to be women. So just interesting, but RISE also made it very clear, and I think, Rachel, you hit that they are working with folks who have probably already been involved with the criminal justice system or had some kind of interaction there. And I think Big Brothers Big Sisters is kind of working maybe more on the like preventative side, although I don't know that without having asked them prior to folks having that kind of interaction as well. It would be really interesting to just hear a little bit more. I think both of them have reapplied for this year about what does that interaction look like? How do you, help support folks of all gender, youth of all genders who are having that specific intersection, and what kind of like skills, do you need to be able to address that? So I think that was something I heard in common about both of those, and obviously very different experiences. I don't ascribe, like this is good, this is bad. I think just different communities that they're serving and different models in terms of how they are serving it. Which obviously is a lot of the challenge that we have when we start looking at who we're going to fund any given year, because we have organizations that are, it's not apples and oranges, right? Or apples to apples. We have similar kind of organizations working in similar areas, but with different approaches to the work. So it's funny that it worked out that way, that we had these two site visits to talk about, and excited to hear from both of them. I think since they are both returning, we will discuss in our next meeting whether or not we want to ask either of them to come to interview. But since we already have a working relationship with them, they're not currently on that list. So just something to think about as you read through those applications. And we'll have another site visit to debrief next time. So that's also working with youth. So exciting that we have that kind of range of services.
I have a question about the incubator thing. I'm sorry, I got cut off there. Did you ever get back in touch with the guy who was doing the interviews? Are they going to be working with Beaverton City Council on it, or do you know what's going to happen to that going forward?
Yeah, I think, and Lisa, if you, Mike shared a little bit about his conversation. If you want to share anything about yours, we'll make time for that. But they are planning to come to one of our April meetings and just share a little bit more. And they're in the process of surveying nonprofit organizations based here in Beaverton. So that's kind of the update that I have right now. But anything you want to share about your conversation?
Really, really fascinated by the fact that, the Beaverton City Council really was interested in this. He was he just seemed very interested in it. He was interested in the work that our group does. He loved the idea that it was those groups on the margin that we really wanted some space for to fund, the ones that we really wanted to fund but weren't quite there yet. We had a big discussion about space. He was really looking at, he wanted some kind of space, because I told him I had seen some space in Portland for nonprofits were getting started, but I forgot where it was or what it was called. And he would like to look for some place like that in Beaverton somewhere. So he said anyone has any ideas about spaces to let him know. But he was very fascinated about the whole incubator thing, and especially the fact that it was just those nonprofits who really needed that extra boost to get up there to qualify for the professionally given grants.
Awesome. Thanks. Thanks, Lisa. Cool. Okay. Well, that is all of our kind of update, prior business, old business. New business is scoring matrix. It's kind of old new business with us all the time. So I'm gonna screen share this so we can go through the scoring matrix and just have a conversation about it. Mike, Wei Wei, and Lisa, looking to kind of you to help share a little bit about how we have scored, and then Rachel, Grace, ask questions as we go along, as you want. So let me screen share that really fast. Screen share. Okay, can everybody see that?
Yes.
Awesome. Let me try and minimize this. Okay, so I can't see you all, so just shout if you need it. So this is the scoring matrix that we put together as a team. It has 8 places where we score. So you'll see that in Zoom grants. They are scored from essentially 0 to 5. So there's kind of 3 categories here that help help kind of clarify what that looks like in each case. And then each of these kind of scoring areas are directly connected to questions that have been asked, questions and documents that have been asked for in the application. So they are in chronological order. So as you're looking at this, it's the same flow as you would have if you're reading through the application. So just to start, the first one, and they also have, sorry, I should have also said some of them are weighted slightly differently just because they have maybe less questions ascribed to them. And Zoom grants will take care of all of that, so you don't have to worry about the weighting, but just so you know. So first question, and probably one of the most important of the entire application, is the alignment with City Council priorities. So an excellent score here, as you can say, program is specifically tied to one of the City Council priorities, detailed, clear description of the program and organization responsible. So what that means, they have to have listed one of the priorities that that it attaches to, but then in the actual description of the program that they're going to provide, it should be clear to you how that connects to one of those priorities. So the priorities again are homelessness and housing, health, or affordable access to after school activities and education. So that should be really clear. This is really important, of course, because City Council are the ones that determine the priorities for this and for our funding. Any comments or questions on that one?
So City Council hasn't really changed their priorities in the past how many years?
Probably in the last, like, definitely prior to COVID. So I'd say probably 4 years. Okay, cool. We'll move to the second one then, which is sort of similar, which is demonstrates community need. But this piece is really around kind of like the timeliness of their ask and how they talk about that. So community need clearly described and substantiated, has the potential to achieve lasting positive change, and then works towards eliminating disparities in Beaverton. So with that, we're talking about racial disparities specifically, talking about serving. There's also this piece around diverse Beaverton clients, but certainly around addressing where there are gaps in services and where certain communities have been left behind. So that comes into, again, some of their program description, and then also into some of the questions about who they serve. Any questions on that one?
Megan, after the visit at the Big Brothers and Big Sisters, I was thinking about this, the scoring matrix. For instance, I would not, I mean, their goal is this, right? Is the number one. They want to serve the community, but the service themselves, the delivery is not quite there. I probably will lower my scores on them. But now this time it's not by reading their application, it's by talking to them. So does that make it unfair for places that opened up to us? Like, I haven't visited all 31, applicants this time. So does that mean it's not fair for them?
I guess I would have a couple answers, and other folks are welcome to weigh in. I think, one, as we read through the applications, right, you're going to read really good applications that are written by professional grant writers, and you're going to read ones that were written by volunteer folks that have, this is the first grant application they've ever written. And so I think when it comes to reviewing these, really, it's kind of similar to an interview, right? Like really looking for the content rather than how nicely it may be packaged. Folks are going to gain points in some categories and lose points in others. And what I have found is, like, sometimes that balances. So if you have a large organization, maybe that is not providing culturally specific work, like they're going to have really clear budgets and get points there, but are also going to get docked in maybe some of the other areas. So I think some of that balances. I think everything we do here as a committee, and the reason that we have site visits and that we read through the reports together, is to help inform us as we go into each new round of granting, which is why, my hope is that folks share out about the site visits and the reports, so that we can use some of that to inform our decision moving forward. So I think on the scoring, we're looking at the applications, but you're also going to have the interviews with the new organizations, and you're also going to have kind of the discussion with the committee. And those things can also impact kind of scoring and final decisions. As would, if anybody had kind of outstanding reports, we would probably have to disqualify them or like dock points. We don't have anybody that has applied in that situation. So good news on that one. Anybody else want to weigh in? And Wei Wei, how does that help answer your question?
Yeah.
Other thoughts? It's tough. That's why we need a good balance of folks who have also are seeing these year to year and also new eyes, because we do want to also have a fresh look going into the rounds of granting. So, okay.
And I think the discussion aspect is really important too, because we each see things through a slightly different lens, and we can see some valuable aspects one person might, and one, or I might see, some value and some critical on parts. So I just want to be, that's one of the good things about this whole process, is that we have our life experiences too that help direct the flow.
Thanks, Mike. One of the pieces too, I should clarify here, that I think you might all be able to see the difference in community need from like excellent to good. Some of this was to try and help balance. In good, you can see generally describes impact but serves more immediate needs. So I think from community discussion, right, we have organizations that are providing like direct things, right? Like you have food pantries, and then you have kind of the upstream trying to address like root causes of poverty. Addressing those root causes is really important aspect of this application, and of kind of what, you know, council had originally envisioned for some of this work. So there's a little bit of a scoring difference in there as well. So just wanted to note that difference there and how you all added that in to the scoring process. Again, it doesn't mean that a food pantry is not going to get funded. It just means we're weighting things differently as we go through the scoring. Cool. Okay, question 3, evaluation 3, serves diverse Beaverton clients. Here you'll see majority of clients are low income by the HUD definition. So there's a it asks for a direct percentage in the application. Serves diverse clients, providing the support they need to be successful, including interpretation, translation, and culturally specific programming. So there are 2 programs, both how do you serve the needs of our diverse community in Beaverton, and then also how are you serving English language learners? Those questions are both also informing this piece. Definitely, right, to get an excellent score here, we want folks who are able to provide service irrespective of language when folks come in the door, and also are able to provide culturally specific work and service to folks that they are providing service to. So if that means, well, actually, the next piece, board staff volunteers are representative of the clients they serve and have training in DEI, anti-racism, you know, trauma-informed care, those types of things. So that will both be in some of the program description, but then there's also a document, which is a demographic table that they are asked to submit that shows the racial, gender demographics of the clients they serve and the staff or volunteers that they have. Not everybody has all of that information, right? They might not all collect it, but they are asked to submit what they do have. So that table will also help inform some of this. And I think when you're looking at the scoring, right, we really do want to see in this piece the skills and knowledge to be able to serve, as Wei Wei said, really the most diverse community that we have in the state. So we'll go into a little bit more detail about that later. But lastly, tracks Beaverton residency and can tell us how they do that, especially if it is regarding like giving out rent assistance or utility assistance, something where they are directly going to give out funding. We really want to see that they're able to track Beaverton residency. And one thing I'll add with this is that we will see folks mention kind of school boundaries, which are more broad than city boundaries, but usually they have a general idea of like who they're serving in that process. And then also the other area where this gets a little bit more challenging is when they're talking about homelessness, just because we know that there is, it crosses boundaries. So those are the areas where I would say you probably don't need to dock points if those situations are happening, but they are a little bit more challenging for folks to respond to. And just a quick look at all of this, right? All of these organizations work directly in Beaverton to some degree. So I think that one will be easy. Questions or comments on that area at all? Cool. Okay. All right. Ooh, this is Lisa's favorite one. Is Lisa still here? Great. So number 4 is identifies measurable outcomes and evaluation methods. we haven't really asked people to talk too much in depth about their method of evaluation, but we do ask for them to really identify how are you measuring what success looks like for you. And this is an area where, again, there are very different approaches and how folks do this, but excellent looks like a clear, specific, robust set of goals that can be achieved in the year of funding. Nothing's going to be like, you're not going to solve homelessness, but like, will you be able to serve the number of folks that you're telling us that you'll be able to serve within the year, that type of thing. Impact is measurable. So in terms of like quantitatively measurable and relevant to city priorities. And then their method of evaluation is clearly stated and includes client feedback. This is the piece where sometimes we have to ask follow-up questions in the interview because not everybody will include it. And I know Lisa's favorite question is like, what longitudinal studies have you done? So I've given people the advice to make sure they write it in if they know that already. So look for that this time, Lisa.
So one of the things that I'm wondering about, because some of the organizations that we have funded for a few years and should have this information, is there a way for organizations that are more than, and organizations that are more than a few years old should have this information? Is there a way that we can absolutely require this as part of, or give it more weight or something? I can see organizations that are just starting may not have all the longitudinal information, but the ones who like SCAT and, Virginia Garcia, the Sealands people, they should all know this. And I think we need to do a better job of actually saying, you've been doing this for years, we need to have this information.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's also true on when it comes to like collecting demographic data as well. Just really encouraging people through this process. And I think site visits are a good place to provide some of that feedback as well. But I think definitely, right, if you're looking at their historical notes and we have funded them for several years and you're not able to kind of see clear outcomes, that's probably going to impact this part of scoring. So I think that's an important part. I also, to be honest, it took me a long time to understand the difference between outputs and outcomes. So I just want to like share that with the committee, which is outputs, right, are measures that look like, for example, how many folks have you served? Like how many people did you provide food to? How many people did you assign mentors? Those types of things. Outcomes are related to the success measures of the service that you're providing. So, what percent are no longer dealing with issues of hunger? What percent are more successful in school, like attending school at a higher rate? What percent have like reduced recidivism with like the criminal justice system? Those are outcome measurements. So I think, again, this is an area where we have to ask questions because some of the work is output driven in terms of like, we're going to try and feed this many people, serve this many people, which of course we want to know, but really also relating back to the need, we want to know about the outcomes. What does that look like in terms of improving the lives of folks and reducing poverty in their lives through this funding and through the work that they do. Another example is just street outreach organizations. Like they've interacted with this many people on the streets. That would be an output. The outcome would be what percentage of those folks that they interacted with on the streets transitioned into housing, which may or may not be the mission of the organization, but for organizations working specifically on homelessness and housing issues, probably is. So yeah, does that make sense? Was that a helpful overview of outputs and outcomes? Okay. I'm learning how to provide them myself. So it's a good way to look at, are we getting to the heart of the work that we're trying to do? Okay. And then the last one in kind of the narrative piece is collaborates for collective impact. So this is, there's a question in there around what are your strategic partnerships and why? What do those partnerships offer? So a few things that we ask for excellent, we want to see strong evidence and inclusion of committed community partners. We want to see them refer to other organizations to meet needs that they cannot. And then also having services that are accessible to the community. So there's also a question in there about how do people find out about your services? Is there a cost to those services? How do people get, involved with your services?
And that's one of the challenges that I found the just forming organizations have is making those connections. And I think, Megan, you've done a good job in trying to work with them to make the connections to other organizations, because that's the big one. I found the new ones don't seem to have the working relationships that the more older ones have been in existence longer have. So maybe part of our job is to make sure that during the year they're getting the grant, they're expanding that. I don't know if there's a measurable way of saying that. At the end of the year, one of the things we're looking for is how have you expanded your collaboration?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. And I always warn people that they should look at who else is applying and kind of know what organizations are doing similar work. Because in my experience, you all kind of will ask them questions about those other organizations in the interview process too. Like, how are you working with this organization, or are you referring through this partner organization that we've worked with? So it's actually been really great in my experience. Some folks actually create relationships through this and through the work that you all do. So that's really awesome because not everybody's going to know everybody in Beaverton. But yeah, I think that's helpful. And really, what we want to see here is what we don't want to see, right, is duplication of work. So we want to see that there's an awareness and kind of, intent to distinguish services or to help refer people into services that might be a better fit or better match to what they need. Cool. Okay, we made it to the budget piece. So in the budget, in the application, right, you have a narrative of the budget where we've asked them to directly tell us some information. And that was really, that's kind of your like cheat sheet budget piece. And then they are also asked to provide additional documents on the budget piece as well. This is going to look very different for organizations, again, that have been around for a really long time, have professional grant writers, from organizations that are doing this for the first time. It's also going to look very different for volunteer-run organizations than from organizations that have staff. So that makes this part a little bit challenging to score. And what I would say is you'll see here that there is some kind of suggestions for when you're looking at the first time folks that come in. Ask a couple other things to look at that can help raise their score in that process or might differentiate a little bit. So first, let's just go through the general scoring. So submits complete and clear budgets. I will tell you, they have all submitted all of their documents, so that's great. But what we want to see in excellent is that they are detailed and that they include not just expenditures, but sources of revenue, and that they clearly define how they are going to use Beaverton funding. So this is probably the #1 conversation that I have with people in this process is we want to know, right, which line items are you spending our funding on? For some, it's going to be like 100% of it is being spent to buy food or hygiene supplies, or 100% of it will be given out as rent assistance. And for some, it's going to be, okay, we're spending 60% on staff salaries and we're spending 40% on client costs like rent assistance and that type of thing. So we just want to make sure that it is very clear to us as a committee, to you all as a committee, what Beaverton funding would actually pay for and be spent on. There are things that it can't be spent on. I haven't seen that in any of the applications I've looked at. Mostly that is like capital costs. So purchasing, you know, a new fridge, purchasing a new vehicle, repairing their kitchen. I'm trying to come up with things, buying a new building. Our money is probably not going to go very far in those situations. So that's really the only category. Operational support is fine. Client costs are fine. Direct services are all fine. But we need to understand what those are. And then the next one is leveraging funding from diverse sources. So there's a question there that asks them to split up by percentage where they're getting their funding and what their highest funders are. So not currently supported by other sources of sitting funding. Good news. That is not true for any of these. So you can mark that one off. Program is highly leveraged with matching funds, has diverse sources of funding. Again, that's going to be an area. This area specifically is where it's going to look a little bit different for first-time funders. And so some of the things they can do to help in that category are show us that they have fiscal sponsor or that their budget documents are really detailed. And, you know, they have gone out to other funders or tried to leverage our grant in other ways. Those are some other areas where that can help offset some of the scoring in that area. And then again, this last piece, identifying the impact of Beaverton funds. It's very clear, crystal clear, how they're going to use our funding and what percentage of kind of the overall support that is for the program. So that is the budget piece. Any questions or thoughts on that piece and scoring it?
Just one comment. Some of the organizations come in with very, very slim, very, very skinny, slim budgets. And I know that really brings their score down quite a bit. I think that's a place where the incubator things would really help. Just to help. I mean, I guess I'm gonna ask you, Megan, is how, you know, organizations that look really great that we really want to fund, but the budgets are really skimpy. How should we deal with that going forward? Should we just put them in a category seed funding, or should we just say we're going to give you a little bit of funding but help you with your budget, or how should we move forward with those?
Yeah, I think right, if they are, again, this is where some of the balance comes in, right? Like if they are meeting a priority need that has been unmet, and particularly they're able to identify that need and how they're going to meet it, and we feel confident that meets the priorities, then I think, right, the budgeting piece is something that we will check in around report time on how did they spend that money, what has that looked like, and I think it's just a balancing act of how that ends up working out in scoring. Typically, what we see is that folks that have, as you kind of said, skimpier budgets tend to receive lower scores and are kind of on the edge of not being funded or not. And so one of the other things, and I don't know if I have said this yet, is that we have also, what we have done is ratio out how many new organizations do we have applying. Let's make sure that we fund that percent as a minimum in our recommendation. So 30% of the organizations are new. So at least, and it can be by number of organizations or it can be by funding. We've done this in different years. At least 30% of our recommendation should be going to new organizations as well, at a minimum. And then we can kind of work up from there. And that was to help balance that piece because we were seeing that we weren't funding new organizations or first time applications. And I think from hearing, Rachel and Grace about your site visit with Rise, right? That's a first time organization this year. And it's one that did not get funding the year before because there were, they're new. They didn't have a lot of funding. And I think that we can kind of see, right, in the site visit and in the report that they shared, kind of how they have followed through and used that funding. And so from there, it's a little bit, like once people get in and then can kind of share more, it goes differently after that. But that's why we kind of make sure that we're actively funding some of those folks as well. And that I will help with that. I'll be like, okay, you're there or you're not there through the process in terms of how many you've recommended going forward. It's usually by number of organizations, I think. So yeah, that was a really good change. That came as a recommendation of the committee and then in conversation with council, because what we saw is we were just funding the same folks over and over again. And since then, we have been able to fund some really awesome organizations that maybe wouldn't have had a chance before. So that's been great. Wei Wei?
Right. Lisa, this is an interesting topic because when I read a very, very complicated professional budget from a nonprofit organization, I actually become suspicious, because if the organization can hire a accountant, they have this and they have that, they have all the bells, whistles, they don't need our money, because our money really goes to organizations that serves the Beaverton population that usually does not get the attention, right? So that's easier for me. I mean, it's easier for me to look at the sort of like simple, rough budget. The one advantage of having the simple budget is that you can see through it right away and you can ask questions at the interviews, right? So it's the dense ones that I sometimes have to say, hey, Renew, you do it. Except he is not here anymore.
It's true.
It's true. I mean, we fund like Scott and Virginia Garcia, and we do that, as I explained to the incubator people. It's a relationship thing. I mean, there are a few of those organizations we want to continue that relationship with, so we always give them some funding. So yes, the Virginia Garcia and the Scott budgets are all professionally done, or at least Virginia Garcia is, and some of them look really big. So I mean, there's that question, is even though they're big professionally done budgets, if they're organizations that we want to continue funding, because, Virginia Garcia, we really probably should fund them, or food bank. How do we balance that? I mean, it's a hard one. And then there's the skimpy ones that I get really concerned about, but yet I want to fund, and the ones that have no experience with budgeting, so they just slam something together. We're going to pay our leader, our staff this, we're going to use this for this, and they have no idea what they're doing. So you have this big gap, and I don't know how you deal with it, but somehow it's a difficult decision.
Yeah, and I do think, right, like most of the folks that I talk to that are applying for the first time, the budget pieces are the most challenging pieces of this entire process. So, so you will definitely see a variety of those documents. You all do not need to be budget wizards. I think kind of the cheat sheet, and I can kind of share like the advice that I give to them that I think is also helpful to you all in reading it, is that when you read the application and they say, this is how we're going to spend the funding that you give us, look at that, click on their budget document. If you look at the budget document, hopefully it exactly matches what they just told you in the grant. they're going to spend that money on. That's like really the real test there. Not everybody is going to have a ton of revenue. As a general rule, I say, you know, if you have other grants or contracts or individual donations, like share that with us. Like we want to know what other types of funding you're already handling. So there are things that you'll see in there where you'll be like, this isn't related to this program. It's not. It's like additional funding that organization is handling for other programs that they are doing. And so that's just to show you all, right? Like this is not the $20,000 that you all decide to fund them is not, they don't have a $20,000 budget. So that's another thing to look at is there are very clear numbers. What is your total program budget? What is your total organizational budget? It might be the same. It might be different depending on how big the organization is. It's really annoying. I think maybe you've seen this in the back end when we did reporting. It does like totals. Ignore that. That's just like a system error in the back. But those amounts, right? Looking at that, how much are they requesting from us and how much is their total budget? And that will also kind of inform, I think really more than whether they can handle that money at all, it will inform exactly what Wei Wei just said, which is what is the impact this funding is going to have for this organization. If they have an $80,000 budget and they're asking for $20,000, that's a pretty considerable impact versus a $500,000 to $1 million budget. So just some things to kind of start thinking about, how do I read over this and look at it? They will have profit and loss balance sheets. Some will have audits attached. Again, you do not need to be a professional budget reader to go through all of those. Really, of all of them, focus on that program and like annual budget and say, okay, does this tell me how they're going to use our funding? Where else are they getting funding from? And does it match what they told me in the in the narrative of the application? Use that as your North Star, your guiding star. For what you're looking for in the budget documents. And I will also be looking from like an administrative lens. So if there are things that are concerns in terms of like us funding them from a city perspective, I will always let you know that. But it does tend to be the place where we're just asking follow-up questions in the interviews on kind of what that means. So yeah, that's your very, very quick intro to budget. And I will send you some additional just kind of nonprofit budgeting best practices sheet. So you can just kind of look at that and have something to think about. Same with kind of just like a quick one pager on equity in philanthropy and some things to think about there. Rachel Rachel, just because your time on DAB and then Wei Wei too, like if you want to share a little bit more specific to kind of the equity scoring and maybe some of the kind of known disparities that we have in our community that we need to address. Do either of you want to share anything about that piece at all? Or things we should think about?
Part of the issue I have with some organizations is that they say things up there, but when they talk about it, when you really get to their practice, you kind of like, you see a discrepancy, right? Just like what I saw at Big Brothers and Big Sisters. I don't know if that organization has truly implemented diversity or equity in their programs, right? Like even with the male lack of male mentors, it's almost like, to me, they are not actively reaching out to the community. If they serve first of all, their office is in Portland. That bugs me. But they can actually make some efforts to Beaverton, since they are serving the Beaverton community and also the student population. That discrepancy is very obvious.
Rachel, anything that like you heard while you're on DAB in terms of like needed services, like social services within like culturally specific communities, or just how we can maybe approach looking at some of those culturally specific requests and applications?
That's a good question. One I did not come prepared to answer today. I know a lot of our conversations on DAB, especially in the last year, revolved around houselessness and how to address that issue in Beaverton, and language accessibility as well.
Yeah.
I'm having a hard time hearing.
It would help if I put my microphone by my mouth. Cool.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. Appreciate it. So, you know, conversations around, there are organizations providing these services in Beaverton, but do they really understand the communities that they're serving? Do they speak the language or offer translation services to help better reach these communities? Those were some things particularly brought to us by a couple of our Arab representatives. Those languages were not being, Arabic languages were not being represented very well in Beaverton. I thought that was interesting. I'm going to think a little harder on this question.
Yeah, I know. I just threw it at you. Just on the language piece, right? We do, through our grant, pass down Title VI responsibilities. So, you know, expectation of non-discrimination. That includes language access. So they need to be able to help folks who walk in their door who may not, who are in the process, right, of learning English. And so there's a lot of different ways that this looks. Some folks have access to like a language line. Some have volunteers that they're able to bring in. Some are like doing food and can like do it with pointing and those types of things. But being able to provide meaningful access that's why there is a question in the application about that. That is something, right, that's an expectation. We don't want anybody to be turned away because they're unable to voice that need in English. So I'm glad you kind of hit on that piece. The other piece that I think, Grace, I remember you speaking to in your interview, and then I heard both you and Rachel kind of mention in our RISE interview, is just this kind of like specific need around navigation services and like connection to services. And so really thinking about what does that referral process look like? How do folks get connected? And how, right, does it rely on like traditional systems? Do you have to like be able to go to the county, know what the county's like coordinated entry system is in order to do that? Or is there somebody who is able to help connect you to the services that are needed? And so this might look different in different organizations. There are organizations, right, when they say they serve everyone, that's awesome. What are the racial demographics of who you are serving? Are you serving a representative percentage? Are you actually serving everyone, right? That's really the check on that piece. And then if you are serving, meeting some more culturally specific needs, do you have the staff that are able to provide that service as well? So I think a really good example of this, right, that we're currently funding is Adelante Mujeres, which provides culturally specific service to Latinx girls and women of all, and actually expansive genders beyond that, but has staff that are representative of the folks that they're serving, have some knowledge about specific needs, and are able to deliver that service in language. So I think there have been a lot of questions in the past, right? Like, well, that's super specific, right? Like, geez, like, is that really meeting everybody's needs? Nope. You know, we want to know if, right, we want to know that they will be able to help either refer people or serve people directly as they come into their doors, right? We don't want them to turn anyone away who needs help. But what we have seen is that there are specific needs being met and being delivered, and that if they are able to kind of share how they do that, that is going to better serve specific communities along the way. And hopefully that makes sense. A lot of our services are kind of focused on providing for dominant white English speaking cisgendered culture, and so we have those services. Those services are awesome. We also need some culturally specific services as well. And so I think just looking at what that looks like, and what is the model designed to do in any of these kind of specific situations. And Wei Wei, did you want to add to that?
Yes, in fact, I'm glad you mentioned about the past. You know, in the past, we had some questions about exactly what this organization is doing. And then I think I finally have a analogy to use to respond to that. For instance, before I retired, Nike always gave us donated a whole bunch of shoes. Okay. Well, you all know Nike shoes not only are wonderfully made, they are made for people with big feet, right? So, so to me, when you want to donate some shoes to a school district, you probably want to think about the age of the people who need to wear the shoes. So you don't always give them 42, 43, size 42, 43, right? So to me, that is not equitable. If somebody said, oh, okay, we'll give you a truckload of shoes, but the shoes don't fit the kids who they want to give the shoes to. So we ended up giving the shoes away later because kids cannot wear them. You know, some high schoolers do have the feet size that big, but not many, not too many. The same thing with their coats. So what I'm trying to say is equity, the concept of equity is that if you think about the size of the shoes of people, you would say, does it make sense to give everybody exactly the same size and the same pair of shoes? No, that's not even fair, right? That's probably in some people's mind, it's equal, the concept of equal, but it's not equitable, right? Anyway, interestingly, Megan, I thought about this example when we had the past meetings. Unfortunately, you know, we don't have the member on our committee anymore, but that was the example I thought about, because that always bugs me. Every year we tell Nike, no, these shoes our kids cannot wear them. Anyway.
That's a really great example, Wei Wei. I feel like I'm going to use that one now.
I think that also just speaks to the importance of being able to see through performative language.
Yep. Yeah, and I think, you know, it's unfortunately we can't interview everyone because you all would not want to stay on this committee. But we do get the I think the interviews are like a really important time for asking some of those questions as well. And I think what I was thinking of, Wei Wei, too, with your shoe example, right? When it comes to equity, we know folks are starting from a different place. And so, you know, there might be a kid that has 7 pairs of shoes at home and like, yep, 1 more pair of shoes and they're good. But we know that there's another kid that has no shoes at home and is going to need several pairs of shoes. So I think thinking about that starting place, right? And when we're talking about social services, we know that there are disparities in housing, in employment, in health services, in terms of institutional barriers that folks have faced. And so folks of color, specifically BIPOC folks, are starting from a place where there may be need for additional resources that aren't as needed in a community that has had white dominant community that has had access to those resources. So again, just kind of that idea of equality versus equity, and what are the outcomes that we're looking for? At the end of the day, we want those outcomes to be the same. We want, you know, all of the students to be passing school. We want everybody to have food and to be fed, but what will it take to get there? What are the output? What do the outputs look like, right? What are the inputs that are needed to have those outcomes, equal outcomes at the end of the day? And so as you kind of look through the pieces around outcomes as well, what does that look like? What is it going to take? And will it take different services or different resources for different communities to get those outcomes that you are telling us you're aiming for at the end of the day? So just a few things to think about. And I love the shoe example. That one's, I'm gonna use that.
Megan, I didn't see the actual matrix. I see the description that you sent with us, but where the just the numbers 1 through 7 and we get to grade it and put any comments on it. Is that in the
Zoom grants?
It is in there. I didn't see it there.
There's like a scoring tab, I think. And if it's not active yet, I'll go into the back end, and I might need to have to update something for that to show up for you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I don't always get it right on the first time. Cool. Okay. Well, yeah, there's a lot of moving parts to this, but I think thank you all for just kind of engaging in the conversation around the scoring matrix. I think I feel really good about you all kind of moving forward with looking at these applications and thinking about what they have to offer. I think I just want to emphasize again, right? Like there's so much need, and these applications, people have put a lot of time into them and just really care deeply. And it makes this a really hard decision for you all, because you're not going to find bad applications. It's just going to be what can we fund this year? What is kind of most needed this year? And what should we prioritize, looking at kind of all the information that we have at our disposal, which is the application, the kind of historical knowledge that you all bring, and also the interviews, and then lastly, really just some of those kind of softer pieces of what do we know is needed in our community at this time. So how's everybody feeling about going into it?
Anybody have an extra 208,000?
I know, if only.
Megan, how much do we have this year? 300,000 something?
About 310. And we might, yeah. So, okay, well, you guys need to start reading. Email me if you have any questions about what this looks like. I will be sending out the historical funding notes if not tonight, then first thing tomorrow. And bring questions and an appetite to our April 12th meeting in person. And we'll have time to chat more there and to talk about what we're kind of thinking after taking a first look through it.
What
Megan,
time is?
What's our meeting after April 12th? What's our next meeting, date meeting?
April 23rd. That's the organization interviews. Those will be virtual. That's a Saturday. Will be from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m.
Okay.
All of this lives in my brain.
do you have a location for the in-person meeting?
Yep. It will be City Hall Council Chambers 12725. I'll put the address in here as a reminder.
It's not the Zoom anymore.
It is not. Cool.
And what time will that be on the 12th again?
I think I said 5:30, but I will also send you all the agenda when it's posted as well.
Okay.
All right. Awesome. Well, enjoy reading these amazing applications. Also, I just want to shout out Lisa. Thank you. Lisa, works directly in the schools, interfaces with a lot of these services, and directly made some connections to the grant. So REAP applied this year, which is an organization I know you've seen in the schools, Lisa. We've also had a few other applicants that you have connected us with. So that's just been really exciting. Not everybody knows about these things.
One real outcome of what I'm doing. I mean, my job is just so overwhelming. I mean, the mental health crisis in the schools is so real. I mean, I can't describe it. We just need mental health people on the school campuses so badly. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a trained therapist yet. That's what I'm being called to do in some of these situations. And it's just really, it's mind blowing. It's overwhelming and mind blowing.
Super challenging. Yeah. Yeah. And thank
Lisa,
you all.
Hey, Lisa, sometime you and I, if you have time, we need to go to coffee or something.
Yes.
I would
Yes.
love to hear what you're doing.
Yeah, it's absolutely, and there's so much need that when I landed, most schools I've landed in for long terms, I get some support. Everyone's too busy. Everyone's way too busy. So I have to figure it all out on my own or guess and then get wrong. But it's just, everyone is just so overwhelmed. I could have been, if Wei Wei hadn't emailed me, I could have been at work until 6:30 tonight, just finishing stuff.
Me too. You all are keeping me on top of it. Yeah, one interesting thing, I actually, Vision Action Network held kind of a community-wide conversation today on behavioral health. And really a lot of that was driven by the providers, and it was a discussion about how there has been a lot of funding in this area, but how hard it is, right, to hire and retain staff with just the kind of challenges around labor in general and the workforce right now, but also very specifically with all of the really, really tough stuff that they have to deal with in the compassion fatigue and burnout that those counselors and mental health providers are facing. So just really no easy answers. But I anticipate that from some of the providers that have applied to this grant, we'll probably hear a little bit more about what that looks like and means for them.
They address the backlog they're having of clients of waiting lists, because the kids who we're trying to get on OHP, they're months out. Even Kaiser, the kids are having trouble getting waiting lists on Kaiser. So even the people with insurance are having to wait, and it's. You get a kid who's talking about suicide and you're telling them they can't get in to see someone, you're sending them over to the Hawthorne Center for Crisis. It's devastating.
Not enough services.
Thank you for your work.
Actually, both you and Megan, I mean, Megan, you're just amazing with so much going on in Beaverton.
Yep.
Is
Well, this
she
committee
stuck?
really helped me. I mean, it's really helped me at work because I know of organizations that other people don't know of where I can refer people to.
Megan, are you freezing? She looks freezing on my screen.
Megan. Yep, she looks like she's frozen. Wonder if the internet over at City Hall died.
Oh.
Looks like she's out. Shall we go ahead? She wants to end the meeting.
Yeah, all right.
Okay, bye.
Bye, everyone.
Good seeing
Everybody.
you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay,
Hey,
bye-bye.
wait, can you stay on for a second?
Sure.
Okay,